Chapter 1: Seeds of Revolution. The Holodomor, one of the most devastating famines in modern history, cannot be understood without first examining the upheaval that gave rise to the Soviet Union. The collapse of the Russian Empire in 1917 marked the beginning of radical change across Eastern Europe, and Ukraine found itself at the center of a volatile political landscape. The chaos of World War I, followed by the Bolshevik Revolution, dismantled centuries-old institutions, replacing them with a new, ideologically driven regime determined to reshape society. Ukraine's struggle for autonomy intensified during this transitional period. After the fall of the Romanovs, various Ukrainian factions attempted to establish an independent nation, but their efforts were short-lived. The Bolsheviks, intent on consolidating power, saw Ukraine not as a sovereign entity, but as a key agricultural region vital to the survival and success of the Soviet state. By the early 1920s, Ukraine was forcibly incorporated into the USSR, and its political identity was subordinated to Moscow's vision of a unified socialist republic. The Bolsheviks, led initially by Vladimir Lenin, promised land to peasants and equality for all workers, which won them temporary support. However, these promises quickly dissolved into policies that centralized power and suppressed regional identities. The Soviet leadership viewed Ukrainian nationalism as a threat to their authority, prompting efforts to erase cultural distinctions and eliminate opposition. Lenin's new economic policy offered some relief and flexibility to rural communities, but this period of relative leniency ended with his death and Joseph Stalin's rise to power. Stalin's ascension marked a turning point in Soviet governance, one defined by rigid control, mass surveillance, and brutal enforcement of ideological conformity. With an eye toward rapid industrialization, Stalin pushed for widespread collectivization of agriculture, which would later become the foundation for the catastrophic policies enacted in Ukraine. The early seeds of the Holodomor were planted in this period, born from revolutionary ideals that quickly morphed into authoritarian tactics and systemic oppression. The transformation of Ukraine from a land seeking independence to a subjugated region within the Soviet framework set the stage for the famine that would follow. What began as a revolution against imperial rule became a vehicle for even greater tyranny, one that would weaponize hunger, erase cultural identity, and ultimately lead to the deaths of millions. Understanding this foundational era is essential to grasping how such a tragedy could unfold, not as a failure of policy.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?